Ladies and gentlemen, I used to say boys and girls, but I don't think we have any in the audience today. I'd like to welcome you to our special council meeting. This is a special subject that's near and dear to us here on the island, near and dear to us all throughout the county. We've been in discussion with Charleston County, who are here in Mass. I want to thank you for giving up your family time to be with us tonight. Or maybe you gave up county time, I don't know which, but we do appreciate your coming. The communication systems that we experience and live with on the island is something that we've talked about with you folks for, well, ever since the digital was put in place. And it's still of concern to us, and we're hopefully able to answer all of our questions and maybe even provide some more information that we don't have questions for at this point. But before we get started, I'm going to ask Linda Tucker, our city administrator, to just walk everybody through, more for the audience's benefit, as to where we've been and how we got here. So.
Okay. And I'm not going to go back to the beginning of time, but it's just going to sound like I'm going back to the beginning of time. The island's communities at one time used VHF as VHF radios, which look similar to what we have now, for our public safety personnel to communicate to one another. Operated our own dispatch system, which we still currently have, and communicated via walkie-talkies and radio on a VHF channel that we received from the FCC. Having the experience of natural disasters in the Charleston County area led to a desire to have interoperability between communities. And by that I mean the ability for any local government in Charleston County to also be able to communicate via radio with other entities within Charleston County, because when we have those experiences or when we have issues that transcend geographical lines, it is necessary to be able to communicate in that manner. And that was a more disaster resistance idea, and most of the communities in Charleston County bought into the idea of a county-wide system, and at that time it was an analog radio system. When there was a conversion to the analog radio system, there were some communication problems that were experienced with that system, but those problems were infrequent, typically occurred at the same time of year, and there was the ability to actually kind of predict at what locations in the various local governments those problems would occur. Same kind of thing that you might experience now with your cell phone, where you go to a certain spot and never have service. So with the analog system, we had mostly reliable communications, and in those instances where we did not have reliable communications, we sort of knew how to anticipate that. When the conversion to digital was made, right from the onset of the conversion to the digital system, we started experiencing radio problems, communication problems. At first, there was some thought that that problem was a hardware problem with the system, that we needed to make adjustments to the actual hardware, and a great deal of time was spent initially during that time period of the discovery of the communication problems trying to figure out what was wrong with the hardware. And the radios were often sent back to the shop, adjustments would be made, and then we would continue to have lack of the ability to communicate and continued unpredictability about where those problems were. This led to more investigation of the digital system, and I'm hoping the county will provide you with more detail than I'm going to here. But basically, the system as it is currently configured does not offer the reliability that is necessary for the public safety personnel to communicate adequately and consistently in all situations. And the ability to predict when and where the system is going to fail is virtually impossible to do. The radios might work on 22nd Avenue one day, and the next day you go out there and try to communicate from 22nd Avenue and they don't work. So the county and the Motorola engineers and folks representing the tower companies committed more than a couple of years ago, I think, to trying to get to the bottom of what the problem was and propose solutions to those problems. And that has led to a series of communications that have been occurring with the county since that time to try to resolve this issue and figure out what is the best decision to make relative to correcting problems with communications where we can have reliability and ensure the safety of our residents, our visitors, and our public safety personnel in communications. Because the county is the lead entity having to do with the radio communications, they have been spearheading trying to solve this problem. Where we are tonight is an opportunity for City Council as a body, because as a full body of council, they have not had an opportunity to ask questions, hear this presentation of the county staff and all of the experts that they have brought with them. The Public Safety Committee of Council has had numerous meetings over the last year where county staff was represented and reporting on the progress and the possible solutions. Alan O'Neill is my counterpart with the county staff that is present here tonight, and I'm going to ask Alan to introduce his team, and they have a presentation that they want to make to us, and we'll see what kind of proposals are being made for solution to the problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, Linda, thank you for having us. I am Alan O'Neill, County Administrator, as Linda said, and nice job preparing us for the presentation. Fortunately, I've got a team of subject matter experts here because I am not an expert in radio communications, but I would like to introduce the folks that are on the program, so to speak, and then there are other people here who can respond to your questions and inquiries. First of all is Dickie Schweers, who is not a radio communication. I don't know. Are you, Dickie? I'm not. He is not.
He will be by the time the whole thing is over, I bet.
He's a smart engineer and a Clemson grad, but not okay. All right. But Dickie is your county council member from District 2. He's here. Again, I'm Alan O'Neill, County Administrator. Walt Smalls is the Assistant Administrator for General Services, and Walt is the gentleman that will walk you through a PowerPoint that we've prepared that hopefully is concise and to the point, and will hopefully answer a lot of your questions, and then tell you where we are and some options that you all have. Donnie Giacomo. Donnie is our Technology Services Director. Bill Tunick is the Assistant Director for Radio and Telecommunications. Bill's on the front row. We have Keith Powell, who is a contractor from Crown Castle, Keith, and Greg Malcolm, who is the Motorola Systems Engineer. And so with that, I'll ask Walt to proceed with the PowerPoint. Of course, I've appeared before hundreds of people that serve on public bodies like you all, and it goes without saying, you can ask questions anytime you want to. So, Walt, why don't you kick this off?
And I would like to say, ask questions anytime. It's best to go to ask your question while we're going through it. And I want to treat it more like of a dialogue and not a presentation that I'm giving, okay? Jump in there anytime. As you know, last November, Council authorized staff, and these are straight from the Council's directive, to sign a contract with Motorola to correct the deficiency that we were having with our digital system. And they authorized us to sign a contract for phase 1 and 2. We'll go through what phases 1 and 2 and 3, what they are. But phase 3, we do not have the funding for phase 3 now. We'll be going through our budgeting process. We are going through our budgeting process.
I'm going to interrupt you already. You didn't authorize $11,000. You authorized $11 million, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
I know it's $11 million. I don't want anybody to feel we're going through all this for $11,000 program. Unless Motorola is.
They're very generous.
But anyway, on phase 3, we're going through our budgeting process right now. Normally what we do in that process, we do our capital improvement plan for the year. And once we finish that process, we will determine whether or not there's funds available for phase 3. So we'll have the time frame nailed down within the June-July time frame when we're going to execute phase
You're going to tell us somewhere along here where is in phase 1 and phase 2 and
Yes,
phase
sir.
3?
Exactly. And for phase 1 and 2, council authorized us to sign 4 leases. So we're not building towers, we are leasing space on towers. So that's the general premises that we're starting with. We'll be leasing space from Crown Castle, who has 4 towers in this whole new network. Verizon, Crown Castle, I said Crown Castle, the American Council, and then SBA's towers. And then we're gonna use Kimball as our consultant throughout the construction process with a not to exceed of about $369,000. They have been with us looking at the design, they validated Motorola's proposal, and that it is a good design and meets the user's requirement. Questions?
You had Kimball provide a report, but nobody's seen that report. Is that available to us?
I will make sure you get a copy of that report, the final report on that, the
Okay.
engineering parts of it.
Okay, excellent.
We're good?
Very good.
Walt,
Wait a minute.
Yes, ma'am.
how much is phase 3 expected to cost?
Phase 3 estimated cost at this time is about 7 million, 6-7 million. But we'll know better as we move along at that.
Well,
Yes, sir.
the initial investment to get going, to start to spend all this money, was how much for the system? The inception of the system cost how much?
When we changed from analog to digital, 17 million.
So this is all,
Addition to that.
thank you.
Okay.
So where we're now, on the 9th of December, we signed a contract with Motorola. Come the 25th of January, we will sit down and do our pre-construction conference, if you will. Basically going through the whole construction process, how we're gonna store materials. So that's gonna happen on the 25th of January.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Anybody else other than Motorola in this picture at all? Was any other vendors?
No, this is sole
Consider-
source, because we had a Motorola system, so we want to make it a seamless system, not another vendor entering into the picture. Okay. And on the 4th of January, we signed a contract with Kimball. Kimball will be at this pre-construction conference also, and as you can see.
Kimball's independent,
Kimball's an independent consultant, yes.
okay. Has no connection with Motorola.
No connection with Motorola.
I don't want to interrupt, but Motorola is really the major player in the digital game in the public safety arena. There's just one other vendor nationwide, but it's a very, very small share of the market. Motorola is
Is the elephant in the...
Yes,
It is, yeah.
barn?
exactly.
Was he talked to at all, the second, the smaller guy, or given an opportunity to
No, it
speak?
wasn't. No, sir, because we had already invested 17 million in the Motorola system, and we wanted a total one vendor system. And then lastly, on the 26th of January, we're gonna meet with Crown Castle to finalize those leases as you see there. The one for Folly Beach, 6 Mile, and then Highway 17. Question?
There's already a tower at 6 Mile, because we've talked about that over the last couple of years. Is that
Yes,
still
sir.
an existing Crown Castle, or is this...
What we're gonna do at 6 Mile, we need a higher tower.
Right.
So it's gonna be a swap and drop. We're gonna put a new tower in. Brown, you gonna talk to that? Is that
Is this,
6 Mile tower?
Yes, sir.
is this your tower now?
Yes, sir, it is, and currently the county is on it.
Okay.
So, and this is, obviously, we'll get into the details of that, but they're, currently it's a 190-foot tower, and they're gonna swap it out for a 290-foot tower, and we've gone through all the motions and all the development to be able to do that.
The zoning is approved for the increased height.
290 feet.
Yes, sir.
I don't think I can see that high.
Okay. So okay, I think this is an important slide, because this is what we've negotiated with Motorola. This is the contract we signed. Phase 1 and 2. Phase 1 basically focus on east of the Cooper and the coastal areas. It also has a tower for North Charleston. Phase 2 focus on the island area, Johns Island, James Island, Edisto Island, and then the Hollywood and Ravenel area. But in that contract, we also negotiated considerations for Isle of Palms. What's in there, if Isle of Palms desire a tower, it's in the contract. If Isle of Palms does not want a tower on the island, we will move the equipment to another location. What's in that contract also is schedule flexibility. If the Isle of Palms wants a tower, and it would be great if we could take advantage of Motorola while they're on the ground installing all the other towers. But if Isle of Palms said, we don't want to do it now, Motorola will remobilize and come back after the fact to install that tower. And then both of these things are done at no additional contract costs. Questions?
I jumped ahead and looked at the next page. I want to ask my question.
Okay, this is 41st Street Tower that we have here, owned by Crown Castle. And at our last meeting with Ms. Tucker, she proposed that option. We had Crown Castle look at it, and we have Keith Powell from Crown Castle who give a presentation on that. Keith.
Step over here real quick, pardon me. My name is Keith Powell with Crown Castle. I live here in Mount Pleasant. Looking at the 41st Avenue Tower, I think that the biggest deficiency that as it stands now is height. So we have looked at the request of the city and with Motorola and the county, looking at extending that tower or basically doing what we're doing to 6 Mile, and I think from a drop and swap, I guess is the wording that Walt used. But take it down and put a new one up, or just extend that existing one. We think we've got the engineering for looking at it from an aspect right now of extending. In doing so, it would be able to handle the county's requirements for their radio equipment. But also other couple of issues that are going on there that not just take one tower in and put another tower up. We do have some land issues there from the aspect of, I think there are 4 or 5 carriers currently on the T-Mobiles, the Nextels, the Alltel, Verizon, and all those. So we've got to kind of work around that. It is a tight space. You can hit that little. So if I'm going to step out here so it's a little bit easier to see.
Keith, the tower that's currently there is how, for the benefit of the public, how high is it?
It's approximately 120 feet. I think 118, and then there obviously is equipment on top of that. The yellow square here depicts the existing site. I want to zoom in here so it'll be a little bit more. Before you do that, real quick, this is Dune's, Wild Dune's property that's owned by 41st Avenue is right here.
It's a
Little zoomed in version. Currently the tower is right here, circle there. What they're looking at to do that is obviously we're going to engineer some type of mechanism piece to attach to it and to extend the county's equipment, Motorola's equipment on there so they can transmit. So approximate height of about 180 feet for the tower, and then when the antennas are extended on it, it would be about 195, almost 200 feet. The design right now is that height, and it would not have a light on it.
That was my next question. Thank you.
Okay, can you run those down for me just one more time?
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't get them written down.
You can answer your question or just repeat that.
Repeat it, please.
Okay. The current tower is 120 feet.
Right.
We are designing it to utilize the existing compound and the existing tower to attach to it to extend up to 180 feet. From there, the antennas are Omni-type antennas. It looks like whips, and they will extend up to approximately less than 200 feet. And that 200 feet for where we are is really the threshold for lighting. So
Right.
I think Motorola will obviously get into their design. We've all tried to use some logic of where it's located and housing near and that type of stuff to try to minimize the impact of the site. Now, that's the tower situation. I'm sure all of you all have been back to Morgan Creek there and have seen this through it. You see the fence and you see the equipment sit above the fence. Obviously, we're in a flood zone. The flood zone and all the equipment are raised up accordingly, and obviously your building codes will get a chance when we file for permits to be able to review all that. So in doing so, you're kind of limited on what space you can have there. And we are having to lease some additional land that's on the north side of the compound from Wild Dunes, and they have Mr. Gorman with Wild Dunes. We've met with him, and they are open to doing that. But the monkey wrench in the whole thing is a water pipe or a sewage pipe that runs through there. So we had to meet with Mr. Jenkins and get some surveying points. And currently, this existing line that's highlighted in yellow is the existing sewage pipe. And part of the development that we'll do in the construction will be to obviously move that sewage pipe first, and then come in and build Motorola's equipment and Charleston County's equipment on site. And if you go to the next slide, there's kind of this is obviously more zoomed up, but also this is the finished, follow my hand there, the proposed location of the sewage.
That equipment they're talking about is office, cabinets and...
It will actually be a shelter, similar to what's there. It'll be a concrete aggregate rock on the outside, but it'll be set up on a platform very similar to what's there. We also have a backup generator and obviously access with railing and all that to have personnel as they need to get into it. They keep it.
So optically, it's not much larger than, I mean, when someone's looking at it on the ground, you're not adding many square feet.
No, sir, we're not. The building is a 12 by 24, so we're roughly getting 20 by 35, something like that, additional land. And obviously, I have drawings that have the specific dimensions, but that's ballpark what it is.
That's close enough. And so the critical item is to just move the sewage line.
Yes, sir. And there's obviously power, telephone, all the other items that go along there. There will be some other utilities we may have to work with, but that's generally the guts of it. I saw a couple of hands, I apologize.
Yeah, no problem. 120 feet is not adequate?
I'll let Motorola answer it. I mean,
Okay.
from the physical aspect of it, it's not, because the antenna's already there. You already have Verizon, Singular, T-Mobile and all that, so obviously to take 120 feet, you'd have to take one of them off. So, you know, there's just not enough vertical real estate there to attach any antennas to it.
But
60
that's
more
not-
feet, though?
But that,
I'm sorry?
I'm looking at Motorola folks here. I mean,
And
everything that's been discussed is either 180 to 230 feet requirements countywide. Is that?
Right.
Well, from a coverage perspective, I would prefer to see something taller than 200 feet. 200 feet, I mean, I think we have some slides that we're going to look at in a few minutes that show the coverage predictions. Dropping it down to 120 feet obviously shrinks the area that I can cover from one site, which puts me in a situation where in order to cover the same amount of dirt, I need more sites. So there's a balance somewhere out there that's in the 300, 350, 400 foot range that are typically ideal for radio towers. Years ago, we used to look at 600 feet, and I think the county had several towers that are, you know, at the 600 foot level, but in recent years, we've started putting them down closer to the ground to help minimize some interference issues and provide better in-building coverage. So, you know, 200 feet is the balancing act of keeping the tower from having to have lights on them. So that's really where the height of 200 feet has come from. I mean, I think in our initial studies and looking at sites and running maps, I looked at sites that were 230, 240 feet, you know, that were actually taller, but, you know, will it work below 200 to keep us from having to light the site? I mean, the coverage maps show fairly, you know, pretty good coverage. And you look at different locations from the water tank to the rec center to this location.
Sir, for the benefit of the record, would you mind stating your name so that we can track who is speaking when?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Greg Malcolm, and I'm the systems engineer for Motorola.
Thank you very much.
If I may, Greg, what is the coverage of a projected of 120-foot tower at this time?
I mean, I have.
If we were only to have that, that's all you had.
I'm sorry?
If that's all that we had available was a 120-foot tower, what would be the coverage if you were able to acquire that site for your equipment?
I'll have to generate that map. I don't think I have a map at 120 feet. I mean, there's not physical real estate on that tower for me to put my antennas. I have 5 antennas, 3 transmit and 2 receive antennas that are going on that site.
At the proposed
Exactly.
Yeah,
200
him
foot.
saying that, physically, that's 40 feet, is what he's saying, to put those antennas, because they've got to, one go up and one go down, and they're about 18, 19 feet apiece. So, I mean, there's some physical requirements here that, you know.
I understand.
180
Where I'm going, if I could explain just a second, is that it just seems like the higher you get, the exponentially your costs have got to increase for what you've got to do to these towers. Would several 100-foot towers accomplish the same thing with just a smaller spread as opposed to a great big huge eyesore?
When you start getting into doing that, I mean, obviously the answer is yes. I could put in multiple small sites to accomplish that. But then you start getting into the cost of all the fixed network equipment of each site. I mean, you're talking millions of dollars worth of equipment at each site, and I've got to put all that equipment at each site, plus the maintenance and the ongoing cost and the leasing. I mean, it's yes, there is a trade-off out there somewhere, and then there are physical limitations to how our sale of equipment can work. I can only support so many sites in a single sale before I have to start breaking it up, and it just becomes a more complicated for the end users. I mean, it becomes a headache. It's not that it can't be done.
If we were to go with this site, this is a guaranteed fix, there's nothing else needed after this?
I mean, the coverage maps that I've run are the guaranteed coverage predictions that we provided as part of this proposal. They show extremely good coverage for this area, for both on-street, in-building, and 6 and 12 dB buildings. And that's with, and one of the things that we've done with the end users is we understand that there's a lot of interference that's causing this problem and causing some of the issues that are in the summer months or in the fall when we have the temperature inversions and the different, you know, atmospheric conditions between the land and over the ocean. So we have taken into account and raised the noise floor to give us additional protection when we ran those coverage maps. So I think you'll be very happy.
And we have some slides that show that.
Okay. Mark?
Any other questions?
Thank you, thank you. Just before you get off, the time schedule for, not, if you started today, I mean, are we talking about a 3-month process? Obviously, the Water Commission has to do its thing before you can do anything out there.
I'll get back to you on that. There's a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Can I speak? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I don't know whether it's been brought up, but if you go up higher, is there a need for guide wires, or does that extend your coverage? Do you have guide wires?
The guy wires are not part of this design for this tower. It will be a monopole tower, similar to what's there, obviously, that would just be taller. They're similar in the county and the other locations that are we call them self-supporting monopole towers. So it looks like a big steel pole without the guy wires.
Just
Okay.
a big footer.
Okay.
All right.
Greg Malcolm is gonna come and show you the predicted coverage. Probably answer some of the
As-
questions. that-
as promised.
Some of the questions we've already answered, hopefully. Hopefully we've answered them all. You wanna go ahead and click them?
It's all blue.
That's all. Well, this first map here, and I don't know if you have copies of.
We do have copies.
Okay, this is portable on street. And when we talk about portable on street coverage, that's obviously outdoors, but the portable configuration is very important in our coverage designs. And the portable configuration for all of the maps that we presented to the county are part of the contract have the portable on the hip. So that allows officers to wear remote speaker mics without an antenna, so that the antenna's staying down here as opposed to them picking them up and back and forth. So, I mean, this is a worse off case scenario for the portable. But portable on-street coverage, as you can see, with this tower located there, I mean, here's the coastline. Can't see it on here, but the streets, I mean, it's pretty much solid coverage. There's one tiny speck there, and you have a few here. That one's off the coast. And then they start picking up in this area. So if you,
So let's look at this in a little more detail. Go
Well, I was
ahead,
going to ask you, so the white dots on this map are the quote-unquote uncovered,
they are
the vacuums?
They are less than 95% reliability at a delivered audio quality of 3.4. Does not mean that it will not talk, it just won't talk at that level.
But let me just look at your blue sheet here. I mean, it's almost all blue, but the white dots to the upper right quadrant there, that may not even be on this island.
It's not.
May not. That's exactly right.
I mean, I don't see the...
There's one white dot in Ocean Point, it looks like.
That's probably Doug's house.
It's Doug's house.
And on the southern side, you've covered, it looks like almost all of Sullivan's Island. This is Charleston Harbor, is that what I'm looking at here?
Yeah.
Sketched?
Yep.
And so between the three towers, Mount Pleasant, I mean, we need multiple towers to have the reliability, redundancy communications, right?
Well, all the towers work together, okay? They are what's
Right.
called simulcast. So when I key up a transmitter on channel 1, that same channel or same frequency is on the air at all the sites. And you can only see the three sites that are here because of the zoom in level. There's still a tower out at the Sewage Road Tower, there's the tower at Allendaw, there's Leeds Avenue. The other towers that are part of the constellation are part of this overall coverage. Those are just the towers that we can see in this print.
Okay. In the development of this print, there's also a tower not on the screen, not on the sheet here, down at Folly Beach. Was that in your modeling?
Yes, sir.
So that this area coverage would have been
Yes, sir.
depicted here also?
Mhm.
Okay.
What about in-building coverage? I mean, a big concern, we have the high-rises, thick walls, and, is this tower here is going to guarantee in-building coverage?
We'll get to the next map.
But
This was on the street.
I do have one question,
Okay.
and you may have answered this and it slipped by me because I was paying attention to something else, but this model is done assuming the 6 Mile site has already had the
Yes, ma'am.
pullout and, okay.
Yes, this is, I mean, if you look at this, that shows phase 3 on the
Okay, I
heading
see.
up there. But yes, it
Okay.
assumes that 6 Mile has been raised to the height that we talked about earlier. All the changes that we have proposed from a Mount Pleasant site or any of the other sites that are part of the constellation are accounted for in this design, or in this prediction.
Hey, Greg, is this your wished-for design?
Is this my wish for design?
I mean, because I know what systems engineers do and what they're forced to do because of considerations of money and everything else. But from a, is this essentially optimal? And I'm not just looking for the island, but I'm thinking, is this an optimal
This
design
tower,
countywide?
If you look at the layout, I know, I mean, some of the original, I had a site that was at the water tank, okay? And then we looked at the rec center, which was a little farther. This site actually works probably better. We'll see a few more holes pop up down here on Sullivan's Island, but it covers farther up where your residents are, I believe. Okay, so it provides me better in-building coverage where the residents are in those houses. And if you look at the constellation of the way the sites are, it's almost perfect. 8 mile distance to 6 Mile, another 8 mile out to Sewage Road, and then on out to Allendaw. So from what I have in place today, I'll actually have 2 or 3 more sites in between what I already have, which provides me very good in-building coverage, very good seamless roaming from the design. So, I mean, I'm very happy with the design. I mean, is it my wish for? Well, I'd like to see that tower a little taller. I mean, I understand those things.
Okay.
So So if you go to the next slide or the next sheet, you have here's your 6 dB building map. Okay, 6 dB building is like a wood frame structure residential house. I don't know that a residential home with a metal roof would be 6 dB. It could vary a little bit, 6 dB, maybe a little greater, but typically we look at a 6 dB building as like as a residence or a home. And you see you still have very good coverage. And keep in mind, this is with the 20 dB, you'll see that 20 dB KTB. That's what we have done to raise the noise floor because of the surrounding interference, to give us some shielding from interference in the hot summer months in those transition time periods.
Question. Interference, is that a natural cause? I mean, or is it caused by other people throwing out frequencies in and around the range that we're talking about?
Probably some of both, but it's coming from locations that are far enough away. I mean, I don't know if you've heard of ducting. Probably in some of our meetings we talked about ducting. That's what we typically see in those transition months in the spring or in the summer or in the very hot day when I have temperature inversions. What happens is the atmosphere creates almost a cable for the signal to ride, and now the signal is able to come from Florida or somewhere way away, Savannah. Different places, and cause me interference. I mean, some of the things that you probably didn't see 20 years ago when the analog system first went in was there weren't that many systems out there. So frequency usage, interference, now you look, there's cell towers all over the place. You've got Nextel, the noise floor just in general is rising, and then the interference from all the other. If we could find one particular transmitter or one particular site was causing me problems, we can do our best to stop it. But the second best option is to overpower it with signal, and that's what we're doing here.
As other people add systems up and down the coast, are we going to have more interference?
I hope not.
With digital systems?
No, you have a very good amount of protection already.
So we have the power that...
And you have, if you look at system designs and the way they have evolved over the last 20 years, systems years ago, and you spoke of, you had your VHF system and then you went to the analog system, and the requirements for in-building were not as great as they are today. Yeah, they were there, but we were going from single-site systems typically to multi-site systems, so they provided much better coverage. Now what we're seeing is with cell phones, people are getting very accustomed to having very good audio, very good signal almost everywhere. So how do I account for that in an RF design for public safety? Because I need more sites. I need that firefighter to be able to talk when he comes into my house or goes into that big building. They need to be able to communicate, or that EMS personnel, or the sheriff's deputy. They need to be able to communicate from within those buildings. So the way to do that is put the RF out there to give them that signal. And this site also hears their portable coming back.
But I want to back up a little bit as far as metal roof building, because I've heard this is a big concern for these systems. Okay, will this system guarantee us coverage for our public safety folks? That were they going to have full coverage on a metal roof system?
They're going to have coverage based on these maps. Part of our contract with the county is to do a subjective audio test. So we're not going to just ride around and measure signal and say, yes, we passed, no, we didn't. We want to go in buildings and talk. Okay, we want to go in grids and walk around on the street and talk both directions, and go in buildings. Now, we will go in buildings that represent a 6 dB size building and see if they can communicate, okay? We're going to do that for 12 dB buildings as well, and then we will do it on the street. Obviously, these sites or this constellation provides me coverage for in 6 dB buildings out to a certain distance, okay? The closer I get to the site, the better chances I have, or the better reliability of a 20 dB building or a 30 dB building.
Greg, could you explain, describe what each building would be?
The 6 dB building is probably a residence.
Three-story house?
A single-story house. A 12 dB building is a convenience store or a small 2-story. This may be 12, okay? 20 dB, you're starting to get into poured concrete walls and, you know, and then greater, the further you step up, you know, I'm not talking about talking in an elevator shaft that's, you know, 3 layers in and inside concrete block and tons of rebar, and, you know, that becomes issues. I mean, we face those challenges with talking inside the jail or talking deep inside hospitals, and, you know, and then there are designs that we do to provide in-building coverage, actually put in-building antenna systems throughout those buildings to communicate in them. So when you have 1 or 2 large buildings like that, that's what you do, or you have the ability to do those things.
We have high rises on the northern end of the building. What dB, what would you classify those buildings?
A high-rise is probably a 20 dB building, okay? The ground floor is where you're gonna see the biggest issue. Typically when I start climbing, the higher I get in that building, I have access, window access. Now I can communicate. It's probably not 20 dB up on the 3rd floor. Down on the ground floor, all the stuff's above me, I'm back inside, that's probably where I'm gonna see my greatest loss.
But this system will cover those?
This system, these maps, this is for the 6 dB building, and then we have a 12 dB building run as well.
Now, let me ask the chief, we have repeaters on the vehicles, do we not, on the trucks? Or boosters, or whatever we call them? Repeaters.
We're in the process of getting a new license to operate repeaters, but it's my understanding that even with the best of the best of the best that we're hoping for here, we're still going to need to rely on repeaters for the very large structures such as the villages and the condos.
Right, that's what he was saying, certainly on the ground floor where all the personnel would be to launch from. Okay, so don't give them up yet. So.
Right.
So that's your 6 dB. You wanna, and then here's 12 dB. You see, I start picking up more spots, more here, and if you can compare them, you'll start seeing this crawl in. So that's with this site at the 80 foot level. This site actually uses directional antennas, okay? It's not just an omni pattern, it's actually a directional antenna that's literally shooting up and down the island here to provide. I'm trying to get coverage from here as far this direction and as far that way as I can. I really don't care about putting it way out here in the water.
Thank you.
So,
Dickie has a question.
Greg, can you actually point to the tip of the Isle of Palms where Deweese Inlet is? Where exactly on that map would that be?
I'm thinking it's right there. Keep putting a shadow right there.
Okay. So really, with that location, all of the large buildings on the island would get excellent coverage, it would appear. And this location is actually excellent for, you know, in relation to where the large buildings.
Right, exactly.
I like this site. I mean, you know, we originally looked at the water tank.
Right.
It seemed central, but it's really more central to Sullivan's Island and the Isle of Palms. And then if you move a little further north where all your residents from the Wild Dunes area, this area is actually very good. And we didn't look at it to begin with. The tower was completely full, you know, but we're now fortunate enough to hopefully be able to extend that tower.
Okay. Very good.
So the next slides are basically the same look, just without a site on the Isle of Palms at all. So if you look, this is on street, you start seeing lots of little speckles. And that's portable on street coverage. So obviously when we go to the 6 dB map,
And there you go.
still says, there you go. 6 dB, I start picking up more, and then and same with 12. That's without a site there.
Well, it's also evident that you have problems in Mount Pleasant and the rest of Charleston County too, with all that white.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
I guess I just have to ask this question. Seeing the maps with all the gaps in service, so this information, obviously you would have done the same engineering on the old system, and so you could have told us without us telling you that there were problems with the system, that there would have been problems with the system based on this engineering. I mean, it would have been the same engineering, correct?
That's correct. The difference between then and now, we did not put a 20 dB noise floor rise, okay? We knew that there were issues out there, but they were very sporadic or didn't seem to be as prevalent as we now know that they are. Since then, we've had another third-party company come in and take measurements, 2 different times or 3, and provide us some of this information of how high the noise actually is, what are those levels. The other changes are the audio quality based on from the end users. Years ago, 20 years ago, when the analog system, or even when we did the first digital conversion, the delivered audio quality was based on delivered audio quality 3.0 or circuit merit 3, which allows me for mistransmissions and repetitions. Okay, delivered audio quality 4 is a higher audio quality level, and the portable configuration changed with the antennas. The portable was always back at the mouth when they were talking back, or it was in a swivel case, so I didn't have the great amount of loss when it was on the hip. Now we have the high loss, the portable stays at a lower height, it stays up shielded against the body. So those are the configurations that are run for these, plus the 6 and the 12 dB building maps.
So that brings me to a follow-up question. Are there any other pieces of data that you would throw into a mix like this that would perhaps reduce, if you threw that in, would change these maps we've just looked at and create more white spots? In other words, you didn't have that in the first time, now you do. So is there anything, I mean, I don't know, and so I'm asking because I don't know.
Not that I know of. I mean,
Okay.
we are the 20 dB noise floor, raising that level is but it's there. I mean, I actually, if you look at the contract and look at the maps are shown with and without the 20 dB noise, because the 20 dB noise is not everywhere. And it's really unfair for us to say I need 20 dB noise floor way inland and reduce my coverage map, or put a design out there that I need a site out there. The areas that I see that are right along the coast. They're here, they're at Folly. Those are the areas where I have that. So that's in there, and that's why we kind of looked at both maps. But other than interference and height and audio quality from the end users, I mean, this is it. I mean, this is kind of the standard for the way systems are designed now. I mean, I think we've got a very good buy-in, and these requirements came to us from the end users. I mean, we met with them over and over and over, and this is what they're asking for. I mean, they actually asked for some other things, but it's like, wait.
We never stop asking.
I mean, and that's only fair, right?
Yeah, sure. Any other questions, or you want to roll on? Okay.
Okay. The next slide is just a schedule at a glance. The first 3 basically deal with signing the tower leases. If you look at number 3, we're looking at the end of February to have the leases signed with the 4 vendors that we're going to contract for space on the towers. The shipment of the generators, the building electronics and generators will be coming in around the June-July timeframe. That's item 4 and 5. We'll start some of the groundwork end of February with the structural upgrades that Crown Castle has to do, as well as some of the site development work around the end of February. Then tower installations, putting up the antennas, and starting to actually connect this stuff will start in the June timeframe, and will be completed in October, around the middle of October. The next item is real important for us because that's when we're going to take beneficial occupancy of the system. Motorola will come in and optimize the system, and we will start using it in the November timeframe. But we will actually do this system acceptance test during the warmer month because we want the worst condition. That will be in the June timeframe. So as you see the schedule there, with final acceptance happening in the September timeframe. Question on schedule.
Okay. Okay. Now you're getting there, Tom.
And I just want to run in the contract, there are options of consideration for the island, whether to put a tower on the island or not. And then also we have the flexibility in the schedule, whether Motorola has to remobilize to come back and do the tower, that's in the contract. So that's where we stand. And I think one of the things I would like to do to make sure you understand the 3 phases, I want to run through each phase graphically and Bill can
Okay.
do that. And that will conclude our part, and you can ask any questions after that. Okay.
Yeah, that's where it starts. Such as.
I just run through this quickly, thanks, Walt.
Come over here. All right.
The existing county tower network, we have, can you bring up the towers individually? All right, thank you.
This is Bill Tunick.
He's a guy on the ground. And who will be the guy on the ground when we start installing all this equipment?
This is what we have existing: McClellanville, Allendale, 6 Mile Road, Channel 2 Tower, up in Leeds Avenue in our parking lot up at the Public Safety Building, North Area Tower up in Somerville, Johns Island, and Adams Run. That's our current, thank you, current constellation. As we have discovered, it's not providing the coverage that meets the expectations and the needs of the public safety community. So, phase 1 adds a tower in between the Allendale site and the 6 Mile site. It's Highway 17. It's Crown Castle Tower. They call it the Sewage Tower, but it's about 2 miles south of Sewage Road on Highway 17, almost right at the Mount Pleasant Allendale border. So it provides enhanced coverage, mostly for the northern parts of Mount Pleasant and the southern parts of Allendale. The 6 Mile Road site, as was stated, currently it's a ASR site, and Ann knows in detail the difference between an ASR site and a simulcast site. What we're going to do 2 things with that tower. One is take it at a higher level to satisfy Mr. Malcolm's desire for coverage, and also make it upgraded to simulcast, which is a much more ruggedized, advanced, and higher capacity tower system. In fact, most of our towers are simulcast. So the 2 major upgrades to that tower. And then, as proposed, the coastal tower. Now we're looking at the tower on 41st Street to provide that coverage to overcome the ducting and the severe interference we see during the summer months. What we're going to do up in North Charleston, it's a little bit too far up in Somerville to cover the heart of the northern neck, Ashley Phosphate Road. So we decided to move that equipment to a site that's on Otranto Road. This is a current Verizon tower at about 300 feet. This will provide enhanced coverage for where the population is heavy and denser, and the building coverage is heavy and denser in North Charleston. Folly Beach, they had a very similar situation as you all, with the summer months especially, as they are coastal, and that's where the ducting, as Mr. Malcolm described, comes in off the ocean, both atmospheric and man-made. So Folly Beach Tower is a Crown Castle Tower as well, which will be a drop and swap that's already been approved by the city of Folly Beach, taking that height from current, it's about 200, it's slightly below the 200 level up to about 240 feet, and we'll be at the top of that tower. Okay, phase 1 and phase 2 are kind of one because we're doing them all at once, but phase 2, in conjunction with phase 1, will provide more coverage on, as Walt mentioned, more on the southern end of the county with a new tower near Ravenel. Actually, it's right over the main bridge, main road bridge in Johns Island, and so provide very good coverage, enhanced coverage for western Johns Island, as well as
southern James Island and Ravenel areas. Edisto, Port Edisto is at the very southern tip of the county, and the coverage is not good there at all. And so we're going to put a tower, an existing site. Of course, all these sites are existing towers, except for except for the original proposal for the Owl Palms Tower. But now we're looking at an existing tower. This is American Tower, American Tower Corporation. So that will provide coverage for St. Paul's Fire Department as well as EMS and county sheriffs in the Edisto Island area. And phase 3, which is in discussions on funding right now, will make upgrading McClellanville Tower to a full simulcast, as I described before, the differences. And another tower in growing areas on the northern side of Charleston County, in between Allendale and McClellanville, Upper Highway 17, we call that one. And one additional tower up, actually reinstalled the Somerville Tower to capture the very tops, but that's going to be an ASR site, a cost-effective site just to cover the very tip of the county. And one additional tower will be Highway 165 in the areas that are west of Highway 17 in the Adams Run area. So this is the plan. Phase 1 and 2, the contract signed, and we've begun implementation. And phase 3, we are working on funding for at this point.
So in total, the county's network changes from 8 towers to 16 towers.
I have one additional question. The projected coverage as presented by Motorola, by Greg, does that actually include the Folly Beach Tower?
Yes. Those predictions include the Folly Beach site.
Okay.
Looks like this would help, but I guess I'll address the elephant in the room. Man, somebody screwed up. It was the idea that we were promised one thing, and then I feel bad for Mr. Schweers, who's got to go back and, ask the county residents to come up with another $18 million to fund a project that was expected to cost $17 million. You guys should be fortunate because y'all still have your jobs. I mean, if I were to do that in the private sector, I wouldn't have it. It's great to see that we are getting some resolve with this, but like Linda had mentioned previously, we were given these same types of radio coverage previously when we were sold this bill. So hopefully this will work. I'm not holding my breath yet. So I'll put my faith in you again, and hopefully it goes through, because it comes down to our personnel who put their lives on the line every day who don't have coverage, and our residents who are dependent on them.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I wasn't involved at the onset of this, or echo some of what Ryan says, just a little bit in shock and extremely disappointed in the service contract here. I do have some questions, though, of Motorola, if I could, please. Where else in the country is this system installed, and is it working the way that it was spec'd to, and why is ours not working? Although that really doesn't matter why it's not working. And more to the point, are other communities, did you all go in with 200-foot towers and they knew it on the onset? I'm just somewhat in shock that we've got to retrofit and double what we thought would work from the onset.
Well, excuse me, Mr. Sailors, I'll ask you a question. Please go to the microphone. It would make me so much happier. Sure.
I'll answer as best as I can. My name is Greg Sailors, and I'm actually the Senior Account Manager for Motorola for this geographical area. And Mr. Stone, to answer your questions, we have, and I don't know if we have a list with us, but yes, we have I don't know the exact count, but hundreds of systems. Each system is unique into itself. As Greg mentioned, just from a design perspective, each is very unique to the other. And so, to answer your question, yes, we have many. And your other follow-up question was?
The height of the towers, I would have thought that you all had done due diligence on the front end to let us know we needed this, rather than after the fact coming back for.
Well, some of the reasons for the tower requirements now are rooted in the user's requests for the type of coverage and specifications that are required.
So
So
using
that
this system in a building during an emergency was not part of the specs that were met? I'm in shock with that comment.
And to answer that question, it was not a part of the original spec.
Okay, yeah, please.
In this contract, following up with what Sandy's talking about, are any guarantees?
Oh, yes, sir.
Performance guarantees
Yes, sir.
that we won't have to go through this again?
Yes, sir.
If it doesn't work?
Greg, you want to talk to the guarantees more specifically? Well, he's the systems engineer.
No, we understand.
Absolutely. I mean, part of the contract was we provide functional guarantees that the features that the system provide, that they will work. We will test those. We will go through an extensive acceptance test plan for the functionality of the system. And then we have a very in-depth coverage acceptance test plan. I mean, ultimately, this expansion is about coverage and audio quality. And, I mean, as Walt alluded to earlier, Bill, the coverage test is to be done in the hot months. It's not to be done in December or January. It's to be done in June, July, August, that time period. So if it's not this year, it's most likely going to be the following year in 2012. And it's not a computer-generated coverage test. We do hundreds and hundreds of coverage tests where we literally measure signal and look at the bit error rate of the digital signal to determine whether or not I would have passed coverage. Okay, that's the way, that was the test in the past here. But to the end user, whether or not my bit error rate is 1% or 8% doesn't mean anything. Whether or not they can talk does. So what we're going to do is, I mean, we have in the proposal, you can see the gridded out file. I mean, we will drive and walk and go into every grid that we can get into, and go into buildings in those grids and do tests through those buildings that we literally talk. So as some of the end users, I know they alluded to, and you as well, it's nice to know if there is a spot that I can't talk, I know where it is. So hopefully they will know those things. When we get done, they're going to know we're talking everywhere. Or this one building we have issues, or you know, those kind of things. But those guarantees are in our contract.
One question with this testing, are you going to be testing any of the 20 dB buildings? Because the maps only go to 12, but I was just wondering if you're going to.
It's not part of the contract, but we can always go in those buildings to see how they work when we're out there doing our testing.
I mean, just to measure and
for information.
Information, and I'm not sure if the chief would be willing, but I think she'd be love to set up the repeater just to make sure while it's testing, so that we have real data going in, so that we know what the measures are. So that
yeah, when we go into the different levels of coverage, the 6, 12, 20 dB levels of penetration, there are no standards for that. In other words, this building is not specifically any, you know, so we have to be careful with that. And I think Greg described it very well earlier, but there's no standard to say 6, 12, 20, 30, 40. And so that's why we went to the levels that we did under contract with guarantees.
In other words, we don't owe you any money if you don't perform.
That's correct.
Okay. Michael, no.
I'm not an engineer. I'm trying to picture when we talk about a 6 or 12 or 20. Put it in real. We have 40-foot houses with tin roofs, metal roofs. Are we going to? Can I guarantee our public safety people are going to be able to communicate effectively in those buildings in a case of emergency with this system upgrade?
The majority of those homes, yes. I mean, they're.
Majority's not good enough. It has to be 100%.
We can't.
We can't put someone's safety in line here.
I mean, if you look at the industry standard for communications and reliability, you're not going to see somebody that can guarantee that, yes, you can talk 100% of all the buildings, 100% of the dirt. It's just, it's not the laws of physics and the atmospheric conditions and just the anomalies that are going on. It's not going to happen. I mean, to increase the reliability from where it's at to the next level is, you know, it's exponentially the number of sites and RF that have to go out there. And then it becomes completely it's not cost effective at all. I mean, believe me, as an engineer, I mean, I don't like hearing somebody say either you screwed up or there was a disappointment or something doesn't work. I mean, I've been doing this for 21 years now, and I want to know that those guys, when they risk their lives, that they can communicate. I mean, I want it just as bad as you do. And I mean, we do everything we can to make these systems work, and they're reliable, they're safe, they're easy to use. You know, all the things that go into a radio communication network so that they can do their jobs. The last thing they need to do when they come up on the scene is worry about is the communications. They have plenty of other things that they need to be focused on.
Chief, you've been sitting there quietly. You've been trained on this for the city, working with the rest of the municipalities, et cetera, as well as the county personnel. Do you have any questions you want to throw out here?
No, I think most everything's been said. I would like to go on the record as saying that I strongly believe we need this tower. We've had several close calls. We have had issues where we didn't get a call when we needed to go. I've got probably well over 1,000 documented, for lack of a better term, complaints where I've actually documented a situation where we had a problem and I sent it in. And for the 1,000 that I've sent in, I guarantee there's probably well over 1,000 I didn't send in. And that's just out of town.
Wow. Same.
If I could rephrase a question I asked earlier, of the hundreds of systems that you say you have out there,
And I can't,
how many are we talking about where you've had to go back and retrofit or you design with these 180, 200-foot towers?
I wouldn't know the answer to that.
I don't know that that we're retrofitting. There are upgrades, additions, enhancements. I mean, there are a lot of times communities will start a communication system, add to it, the community changes, population bases change, buildings are added, you know what I mean, and sites are added, channels are added. You know, Beaufort County they have this same simulcast subcell. It's up and running. I mean, they have a 5-site system, and they have an area on one of their islands, I think, that they're looking at, you know, potential ways of enhancing their coverage. Wasn't necessarily a big requirement, but yes, individuals go out there.
Okay.
I guess, and I didn't, this was a wonderful presentation, I appreciate it. It really, I think it educated all of us, and I did not mean to direct anything towards you. Obviously, you had built a system that you were given information on, and I think that information probably was not complete. I think, obviously, now we've gone through, done the work that we've needed done, looked at every possible scenario that could happen, and hopefully this will work. But I appreciate you guys stepping up and taking care of that as well. Hopefully, you know, this will solve the problem. But
You had one question?
Oh, yes. Say, for instance, I'll set up a little scenario. Say we lose we have a
First of all, can you identify yourself for Maureen?
Oh, John Gindia, Owl Palms, CCAP. We have a lot of storms here. Say we lose our main tower and possibly another one in the storm front comes through. What can you say by the strength of the other towers coming in? Will we have any kind of coverage here on the island?
Yes. I mean, if one site goes away or one site somewhere else, you may have mobile coverage, you may have portable and street coverage. I mean, obviously, you're not going to have the same level of coverage that you have with that tower there, but that's one of the advantages of a simulcast system. depends on what your definition of reliable is in that scenario. You would have, I can't tell you that if you're standing on a dock or you're in someone's house and 2 or 3 sites are down because of who knows what, that you're gonna be able to communicate at that one spot. I don't know that, okay? I mean,
Go ahead.
Debbie Jones, on Palms. It looks like $17 million is spent on the initial changeover, and clearly it sounds like from the fire chief, it's not reliable. Is there any kind of, I mean, did you guys not guarantee anything with that to start with?
we had a coverage guarantee. It was not the in-building coverage. And I think a lot of that 17 million may be in subscribers. It's not totally in infrastructure.
A significant amount of that was in subscribers.
Kind of skew your view of how much the infrastructure costs. Okay, because a lot of that would have been the rolling. It was probably rolling stock.
I think the main thing is the reliability here, and I think some other people have mentioned, we've got a lot of metal roofs here, a lot of very strong buildings that the houses are built to withstand hurricanes here, and they have a lot of concrete, that kind of thing, and it just seems if maybe we need to go to back to an analog or an old system that is reliable, something that is reliable, and use the 911 operator system type thing in a disaster situation, that you can coordinate all the other areas. And the main thing is the reliability, and it just doesn't sound like you can guarantee a whole lot, and with the amount of money that you're talking, it's just phenomenal.
Well, analog versus digital, metal roofs or buildings or trees or ducting, I mean, it doesn't know the difference, okay? So, I mean, those things are gonna affect analog just as they do digital. And what we're seeing today, I mean, the analog system, to my understanding, is still partially in place. I don't know that anybody's using it, okay? I don't know how reliable the analog system is anymore.
Well, cell phones seem to be working better than the map that you were.
How about your back porch, Barb?
Yeah, my cell phone only works on my front porch. Like in my house, it doesn't work. Verizon.
Okay.
I stepped out a moment at the beginning of the meeting because I thought I had an emergency call. Verizon cell phone, and I had to go outside. It would not work.
Right. There was one last question in the back.
Are your RF estimates, I'm sorry, I'm Dean Surratt with Deweese Island. Are your RF estimates taking into consideration Nextel rebanding has already been completed? And that is in fact the case in this area. Nextel has completely been rebanded.
As far as I know, that is correct.
If not complete, they're very close.
And how much of an impact was that on the system?
I think we found one location where we had a site that was causing us a lot of noise problems, and they rebanded that site and helped the issue. But the studies that were done from Bird Technologies, where they came in, they cleared a channel, set up equipment, let it run for 24, 48 hours, looked at the data. It's just it's a general noise floor rise. It's not necessarily any one frequency in particular.
And we identified too in some of those studies where some of the suspects causing the interference, typically down to Florida, Savannah areas, after rebanding, we'll be clearing some of those channels. That should give us some good benefits also.
Okay, so Eastern Seaboard wise, rebanding is not complete?
No.
For general purposes?
No. I mean, the state, just in general in the state, is still in the process of rebanding.
We just signed a contract to do those activities just recently, the state and the Nextel.
So essentially, the noise floor should get better as time goes on?
Theoretically, yes.
I mean, hopefully. I mean, the RF environment out there, I mean, everywhere we turn around, there are more and more cell phones. I mean, and that's things to kind of look back, to keep our minds around. 20 years ago, we probably all didn't have cell phones. There weren't Wi-Fi, RF, LANs and switches and all those kind of things in every house. And, so I mean, we constantly face challenges. to help you communicate.
Okay, thank you. Linda, please.
Yes. Obviously, the money to do all of this has to be coming from somewhere, which leads me to what kind of budgetary impact the City of Isle of Palms can expect in terms of the fees that we pay per radio with Charleston County. We're currently paying fees. When can we expect those fees to go up?
Or down.
Or down. Or can we recover what we paid for the system that didn't work? But I need to be able to anticipate that expense.
And we'll make sure you get that in advance. We know that there's a large operating cost when we finish phase 1 and 2. Staff will be going into council and recommending a fee increase based on phase 1 and 2. I'll give you, don't hold me to these figures. We will absorb the cost for the remaining of this fiscal year FY11. Our proposal is to absorb the cost for FY12. This is Walt Small now, my boss sitting there. He probably, please.
He's okay so far.
But anticipate January 2013 fees to increase. And if you run the numbers, our operational costs will increase about $659,000, divided by the number of radios we have out there. So look at a $11 fee increase, changing from 25 to 36 for the addition of phase 1 and 2. And then when we include phase 3 at a later date, staff will recommend to council another increase. What we want to do in this whole system is to cover all the operational costs by the fees. That will be staff's proposal, but yet it has to be approved by council.
Chief.
I think it's important to note that we will be affected by a price increase whether we get this tower or not.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just real quick, I want to thank y'all for putting this together. It's been a real eye-opener for me, and I appreciate it. And the one thing I am taking away from this is had this been spec'd to the standards perhaps that we are at now, this would have been a $30 million job, not a 17. And I do understand that, appreciate what you're trying to present. Thank you.
Well, it's just a classic example of making sure that all the end users are involved on the design front end. And I think that's probably where the ball was dropped, all the end users and the service people that needed to provide what their requirements were. Probably didn't have the opportunity at the time.
Okay, right.
As Public Safety Chairman, I know we've met with most of these folks on numerous occasions and put the hard questions to them, and y'all came back with some answers tonight that sound pretty darn good to me. So I'd like to thank you for that, thank all those involved. Particularly like to thank our fire chief, who really brought these problems to the forefront and has been very involved from day one on identifying the problem and working to a conclusion to get it resolved.
Okay. Thank you. Good job. I want you to ponder what you've heard tonight. We have a meeting next week. We'll be discussing with staff if there's any structural impediments to proceeding with the tower as you proposed at the 41st Avenue. And if there is, we'll discuss that next week. I hope we'll be able to put it together for next week. Otherwise, we'll discuss it again just to get a census of your thinking as to whether we want to recommend to the county to proceed with the tower. I don't want to take that up tonight. We'll do that next Tuesday when we meet and then provide them that feedback thereafter. So if that's acceptable. Linda?
Well, I just wanted to make sure for the members of the community that are here and for council to just remind everyone, in order for the city to put a tower at 41st Avenue, it will be necessary to amend the zoning ordinance to allow a tower of that height, which will require the readings of the ordinance and will also require that change go through the Planning Commission and a public hearing. So there are other than deciding whether or not we're going to go with the tower, there are other actions that will need to occur in order to make this a reality if it is to be.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. Get lay that out so that everybody can see the timing and scheduling, and we can provide that to Alan and his team. Alan, you want to have something?
Yeah, thank you for having us, and I hope we've answered their questions. Anything else that you all need from us, anything that comes along the way, questions or just comments or whatever, Walt's sort of the contact person, but Linda always knows to call me, and she doesn't hesitate. We want to be a team as we proceed with this. I feel very responsible for where we're headed with this. The staff knows that I feel very responsible, and if I feel very responsible, they feel very responsible. I'm comfortable with where we are. We're making good decisions with information that we have now, and thank you all for hearing what we have to say.
Okay.
Thank you for being here.
No other discussion points? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second. Seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for coming. Very informative. Very good.